This video will be of particular interest to those firms involved in electronic billing, but can also apply to a wide range of billing situations. Specifically, we're going to discuss the options for automatic enforcement of billing guidelines. Here we see a matter form, and I'm going to select the Billing Guidelines tab right here. Now, this won't necessarily apply to all firms or even all matters within a firm, but it is here in LSSe64 for anyone who needs it. Basically, what this allows us to do is define certain parameters about any time entry that might be recorded to this matter. By ensuring that time entries meet certain criteria when they're entered, the billing process later will run more efficiently and effectively. So let's go through some of the options for billing guidelines. We'll start by taking a look at this hours box. Now, every firm will have their own default for how hours are to be entered in the system. Most firms use 1/10 of an hour. But if this particular matter needs you to enter time all the way down to hundredths of hours, you can just change it right here. So now this is going to allow you to enter time all the way down to the hundredths, and you can adjust the way the timer does rounding as well by making the changes here. You can have it round up, down, or to the nearest increment by whatever value you've put in these fields. For this matter, I'm just going to use the firm default. Down below, there are boxes for task codes, activity codes, and expense codes. These are almost always required in electronic billing. So if this matter is to receive an e-bill in, say, the leads format, chances are that a task code is going to be required. And depending on the client, maybe an activity code is going to be required as well. So I'll mark both of those as required. And I want to make sure that anyone who enters time to this matter always uses the firm-defined task and activity codes, not anything special that's been entered at the client level. In this miscellaneous box, we have options to require things like work location. That's discussed a little bit in the time entry video. We don't want to require work location, so I'll leave that blank. We have an option to disable any kind of rate selection overrides during time entry, and we do need to stick to predefined rates on this matter, so I'm going to select that. We also have the option here to display warnings in time entry if the new time entry is going to bring this matter to 80% of any applicable budget, and that might be a budget at the task code level or phase code level or in total for this matter. And then finally another budget warning once you reach 100%. And then at the bottom there's a time entry message box, and this is a extra narrative or warning message that can appear whenever somebody enters time to this matter. And I'm going to put in something simple like do not charge for travel time, just so that you can see how this works over in the time entry in a minute. Now, up on the top right-hand corner, there's a box that says Timekeeper Restrictions. This allows us to restrict time entry to a select group of timekeepers. So if there's only 1 or 2 or 3 particular timekeepers that you want to allow timesheets to be entered by, you can check this box, click Add, and then list the timekeepers that you want to allow. I'm not going to put any timekeeper restrictions, but I am going to put position restrictions. This next box down here, I'm going to restrict time entry to the following positions by leaving the check mark there, clicking Add, and I can say, okay, we want to allow partners and associates to record time, but nobody else in the firm. And then finally below that there is a box for narrative restrictions. And here we can do things like record the maximum number of characters to be allowed in a time entry narrative. This is useful for e-billing formats that have limits. After all, LSSe64 allows you to enter something like 32,000 characters of narrative per time entry, but some of the e-billing formats may be more restrictive, so you can limit it to, say, 1,000 characters by putting in the number 1,000 there. I'm not going to do that in this case. And then finally, you can even have the system analyze the narrative for restricted phrases. And these might be phrases that are restricted by the bill review service, or it could be just simply somebody's name and how you'd like it to appear in the narrative. So I'm going to use that as an example here. I'm going to add a restriction that says restrict the phrase Sue I'm not going to prohibit the use of Sue, but I am going to suggest whenever that comes up that it be replaced with Susan. That way we ensure more consistent time entries. And keep in mind too, you can add as many restricted phrases and suggested replacements as you want. There's no limit to how many words you can list here. Now that we have these billing guidelines established for this matter, I'm going to click OK to save that, and I'm going to bring in a time entry form from the other side of my desktop, and we'll go ahead and enter a transaction for this matter. It was client 136, matter 5. Now, first thing we notice is somebody had a billing guideline message set up for that client, but here's the one that I just set up for the matter. If we click on that symbol, it says do not charge for travel time. So you see how that carried forward from that billing guidelines tab over to this time entry. Also, as soon as I put in that matter number, I don't know if you noticed, but these task and activity code fields that were disabled before have now been activated. So not only do I know that something should be entered here, but chances are it's going to force me to enter the appropriate task code and activity code. So I'll go ahead and enter some hours. I'll say an hour and a half. And if I try to save this entry right now, it tells me task code is required for this case because we told it so in the billing guidelines earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the task code and the activity code. And if you don't know these codes, you just press the button on the right and it gives you a list to choose from, so they're easy to get to if you're new to task and activity codes. And then finally down in the narrative, I'm going to put meeting with Sue Jones regarding agreement. Okay, and then remember we created a narrative restriction before that told the system to look for the word Sue and suggest Susan anytime it finds it. So now I'm going to click Save. And sure enough, it says, okay, we found this restricted phrase Sue, highlights it for you down here, suggesting the replacement of Susan. Now, because the word Sue hasn't been prohibited, I can click Ignore. If this had been a prohibited phrase, we'd be forced to change it to something else. But I'm going to go ahead and follow the suggestion here and say Replace. And as soon as I do, you'll see it quickly put the word Susan where we saw Sue before, and the entry will be saved. So here we go, Replace. And we're done. So I'll drag the matter maintenance form back into view here so we can just take one last look at the billing guidelines tab. We didn't specify anything special for the way hours are entered, but we did say task codes were required and activity codes were required. I sort of skipped over it on the time entry screen, but the whole rate area of that form was disabled, so we weren't able to override any predefined rates. This was the special message that we displayed. And had we tried to enter a timesheet for someone who wasn't a partner or an associate, it would have blocked us. And then finally, here's where we did the narrative restriction, suggesting that Sue be replaced with Susan in every case. So these billing guidelines, they can be created at the matter level like we did here, but they can also be done client-wide. So if you have billing guidelines that apply to an entire client, all the matters, they can be done in one shot there. So hopefully you find this useful. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please give our office a call at 800-331-4122. Thanks again. Bye.